I was an Armenian, a Saroyan, a newsboy, a witness, and all the rest of it. I am American, Bitlisci, and Armenian. What I'm looking for is the man. Where is the man? How can one living man possibly be greater than another? Even if your nation is strong enough to win the war, death, of one sort or another, is the only ultimate consequence. Death, not life, is the only end. And it is always people, not nations, because it is all one nation, the living. So why won't they change the way? Is every noble problem of man solved? Is there nothing more to do but kill? I am sitting in the presence of my Father. It is like looking into a mirror, for I see myself. I look up his melancholy face to see how he is taking it all. Հայրս մահացած է 1911 թվականին։ Եղբայրս Գրիգորը 6 տարեկան էր։ Ես 3 տարեկան էի։ Հայրս հիմա քանդված լեռնային քաղաքի մեջ լույս աշխարհ եկած է։ Եղբայրս Գրիգորը ծնած է Սև ծովի ափերուն։ Տրաբզոնի մեջ 1904 թվականին։ Հին աշխարհի հողի վրա ավանակով գամցիով ճամփորդելու ընթացքին կամ հին աշխարհին ծովերուն վրա թեպի նոր աշխարհ կացող նավու վրա Ամերիկայի ճամփուն վրա ծնած է։ Երբ երեխա էր, երբեք երկար ժամանակ նույն տեղը չէ մնացած։ Կացած է լեռներու քաղաքեն Տրաբզոն, Տրաբզոնեն Մարսիլիա, Մարսիլիայեն Հավր, Հավրեն Նյու Յորք, New York-en, California. Arad լացած է։ Երկու քույրերս, Զաբել եւ Կոզետ, ծնած են Բիթլիսի մեջ 1899 թվականի եւ 1902-ին։ Եվ ուրիշ մանչ զավակը, ես, 1908 թվականին։ In the old country, he was a man of honor, a professor, and he was called Agha, which means approximately Lord. Unfortunately, he was also a revolutionist. He wanted the handful of people of his race to be free. He wanted them to enjoy liberty, and so he was placed in jail every now and then. Finally, it got so bad that if he did not leave the old country, he would kill and be killed. He died in San Jose, California, far from his birthplace, Bitlis in Armenia. He was 37 years old. My father was a writer too. He was an unpublished writer. I have all his great manuscripts, his great poems and stories written in our native language, which I cannot read. I am writing in English what he would have written in our native tongue. and we are the same man. One dead and one alive.
Cumhuriyet Bürosu Atatürk Bulvarı'nda, orada Amerikan Haberleri Bürosu var. Bir gün bir faks gelmiş. William Saroyan geliyormuş Türkiye'ye vapurda. Birisi demiş ki, Peki Dotyan var gazeteci Cumhuriyet'ten, sizi o gezdirsin. Soruyormuş Saroyan, acaba kabul eder mi diye. Şimdi bu bana okudular, ben deli oldum. Delirdim. En sevdiğim yazar ya, düşün. Ya dedim ki gelsin dedim gelsin. Uzatmayalım. Gazetelerde Saroyan geldi, Amerikalı bir Ermeni yazar, Türkiye Amerikalı falan. İkinci sınıf bir otele inmişler. Ben içeri girdim. My friend, ot yandı, boynuma sarıldı. William Saroyan, hoş geldin bilmem ne. Viski içiyorlar, böyle oturduk. Yarım saat kadar anlattık nasıl olacak falan. Bunlar arabayla Bitlis'e gidecektir. Ona güzergahı çizdim, şu yoldan daha kestirme gidilir, şuraya uğranır falan. Geldim gazeteye, dedim ya Saroyan gidiyor oraya, çok güzel bir yazı dizisi olur. Ben buraya gideyim, ya şimdi mecliste iş var falan. Verin yıllık iznimi dedim. Bir karayolların arabalarıyla o istikamete giden bunları takip ettim ben. Tabii bilmiyor. Ancak yıllar evvel annesinin babasının anlattığından büyümüş. Hep onu kurmuş kafasında. Ve özlem içinde olduğu her halinden, hem davranışından belli.
I would go there and live there. I would settle down there and die there, and put the bones with the other Saroyans that have died there for maybe, who knows, forever. Our bones are there. We are there, as far as memory of our old-timers goes. Memory arrives early with pain, with deprivation, with denial. If you're at the center of a loving home and family, your memory will not be quick. It will be delayed because you're in a great condition. If you are deprived of your father by death and your mother by necessity, and you are in a strange smelling place, like an institution, the first thing you're going to remember is the separation of your mother. She is gone. You're not 3 years old. She's gone, and she says, now you're a big man. No tears. So you stop. That will cause memory to begin. Memory is imagination. There's a kinship because what you see and what you remember is never literally what it is. It's what it is to you. Like my stories, Saroyan is Saroyan. It's all Saroyan. I'm an imaginary character. My uncle Khosrov had a friend one year, a small man from the old country. His name was Halil, and he was Arab. He could speak no English, only a little Turkish, a few words of Kurdish, and only a few of Armenian. But he hardly ever spoke anyway. The Arab sat down that first day only after my mother had asked him a half dozen times to be at home. For a moment, my mother imagined that the Arab might wish to speak, but it was soon obvious that, like my uncle Khosrov, nothing grieved him more than to do so. Whatever the source of their friendship, whatever the understanding between the two, and whatever the communion they shared, they were at any rate together occasionally in our parlor and welcome. I sat at the table in the dining room and began turning the pages of a year-old copy of the Saturday Evening Post that I knew by heart. I must have turned the pages a little too quickly, however. My uncle Khosrov shouted, "Gamats daga, gamats!" For a year, my uncle Khosrov and the Arab came to our house. Sometimes they sat an hour, sometimes two. Once, my uncle Khosrov suddenly shouted at the Arab, "Vazan sirgasem," although the Arab had said nothing. Then my uncle Khosrov would say quietly, "Chel jugarag for pera." One day, when my uncle Khosrov came to our house alone, I realized that the Arab had not visited our house in several months. He died an orphan in an alien world, 6,000 miles from home. He wanted to go home and die. He wanted to see his sons again. He wanted to hear them breathing. He used to think about them all the time. Now, he is dead. I want a day to be marked. I don't want any day to go by without something. Something must be done. I think it comes from the day when my father died. When I was a little kid and I had nothing from him except 6 chairs. I didn't like the almost total effacement of my father, and I replied to that effacement. Well, you are not going to efface the sun too. That will not be possible. I'll do something. A small boy crossing a street, alive somehow, going somewhere. First he sold newspapers. It was because he wanted to do something, standing in the city, shouting about what was happening in the world. He used to shout so loud that he would forget he was supposed to be selling papers. I was this boy, and he is dead now. But he will be prowling through the city when my body no longer makes a shadow upon pavement. And if it's not this boy, it'll be another. I am somehow glad that I can remember the boy climbing the fig tree, somehow everlastingly of life, nothingness, blessed or unblessed, somehow deathless, insanely glad to be here. So it is true. There is no death. Somehow there is no death and can never be. My grandmother was full of song and laughter and anger. Through our morning sleep, when we were half awake, we would hear her going about the dark house, sweeping, bringing in firewood, cooking, shouting at the cat, and singing. Whenever she entered our house, I had a feeling that something definitely of the old world was in our midst. She had brothers and sisters in the old country, and she knew that many of these had been destroyed, and that the others were homeless and hungry and ill. She would spend long hours sitting in a corner and occasionally sighing. Broken, forgotten, broken. And we knew from these spells of hers that her laughter was not trivial, but laughter that was born of despair. She knew countless folk tales, which she related with the accuracy of a poet, never altering so much as a word of a story, no matter how many times she was called upon to tell it. Besides, my stories were told to me. Once I left the orphanage, just about the age of 8, I began to hear them from both my paternal and maternal grandmothers, and from all my other relatives, old people. They all had stories. I have frequently sung Bitlis, for it is the highland city of my people, and in a sense a nation by itself, in which the three peoples living there, side by side, felt closer related to one another than to others of their own tribes in other cities, the Armenians, the Kurds, and the Turks. Kurdish, said my grandmother, is the language of the heart. Turkish is music. Turkish flows like a stream of wine, smooth and sweet and bright in color. Our tongue, she shouted, is a tongue of bitterness. We have tasted much of death, and our tongue is heavy with hatred and anger. Too much suffering is not good, and it is not Armenian. It is human in spite of our long history of being geographically in the equivalent of constant vulnerability to change, which is disastrous in its potentials. We have suffered possibly a little more than some peoples, but not more than all people. I am unable to conceive my identity apart from being Armenian. It is as central as the spark of life from the beginning. It is part of me.
Parti gutiya xuya şerevverda çar cami haya dudu serçuke dudu Osmanlı'ya ye serçuke xarabiya binanmaya ye Osmanlı xarabiya pika kele pedaraşa pedaspiya.
Da Türkçesi Van Kalesi milattan önce 834 yılında Urartu Kralı Sardur I tarafından inşa edilmiştir. Urartular milattan önce 9600'ları arasından üstün bir medeniyet seviyesine ulaşmışlardır. O zamanki adı Tuşoğla Şirik kalede 12 mezar odası, 9 siviyası, 2 kilise, 4 cami bulunmaktadır. 2 cami Selçuklara, 2 cami Osmanlılara. Selçukların camileri yıkılmış, Osmanlılar kalmış. Kalenin kalpleri Akkoyun ve Karakoyun.
İngilizcesi the fortress was built in a London to fund the faith of all critics Urartu exciting one urated. Lish developed in relation between a London 601 urated. Otomo Selçuk Osman Küç Ermeni.
Bu Japoncası kuku kara aligato konnichiwa hikuri kuri kimashu senura wangu ane pane dom aligato andeska ayari.
One of the greatest influences on me was Oliver Twist by Charles Dickens. I used to sell papers in the rain and go home and worry about Oliver Twist. I was in a worse condition than he was, but I used to worry about him. Ait khejdegan himan or inch bidi badahi. Mark Twain and Walt Whitman, Guy de Maupassant really threw me into writing with full force. At Technical High School in Fresno, not yet 14 years of age, I read a story called The Bell by Guy de Maupassant. That made me a writer.
Saroyan was one of those native writers of English who had an instant sense, whose ear instantly was able to translate English dialogue and speech into a literary form. Let me explain what I mean. I mean, now you all know this. It's the same in any literature. When you read dialogue that convinces you, you're reading, you say, oh yeah, that's just right on, that's just how they talk. As a matter of fact, that is not just how they talk. And the easiest way to find that out is to simply take a tape recorder with you when you're with your friends or when you hear other people talking, and then go home and transcribe that, and you'll see that it's ungrammatical, unstructured, it's hopeless, it's not coherent. So Saroyan had the ability of not only knowing how they spoke, but how to construct that language to make it sound as though this was naturally spoken. When people read it, they said, oh yeah, that's just how they talk. It's just so, it rings so true. Huh? It's so perfect, it's so right. And that was a real gift. That's why his theater was so successful. It was not successful because of the structures of his plays. Most of his plays had no structure. And in that sense, he was severely criticized by the critics. The New York critics most of them couldn't handle Saroyan because they wanted a structured play with a beginning, a development, and an ending. They wanted plot, and Saroyan was anti-plot. He hated plot. He found plot a very terrible crutch, a dependency. He wanted to construct without plot and yet to keep it together. So when people say about when some of the critics said, but what does it mean? And in that respect, Saroyan was a pioneer in many things. He was writing theater of the absurd before Beckett and before all of the French school of Ionesco and the others who were involved in the theater of the absurd. He was doing it in the 40s, in the early 40s. He was doing it in the late 30s. And when Beckett wrote his Waiting for Godot, and it became so famous, for instance, in 52 and 53, both in France and in England, Saroyan was just thrilled. He said, finally, someone is catching on, caught up with me. And of course, there was no writer, not Jack Kerouac or anyone else, that could write spontaneously the way Saroyan taught himself to write. He sat at the typewriter and wrote. Saroyan was not a sophisticated writer like the others who had gone to university or who were professors or who were in an intellectual crowd. Saroyan is someone who never finished high school. He's someone who really never even started high school. He's self-taught, essentially.
My business is to live. Writing is living. And there comes a time when writing and living, art and reality, come very close. And I want them to come close in my life. I take the paper and I write down, the world is a great, big, fat falsehood. Now, how can I be miserable? I cross out the world is a great, big, fat lie, and I say it may hurt somebody's feeling. So I put over there, the world is really not real. I know all about the whole theory of Saroyan. The warm-hearted Armenian embracing everything and so forth. And I have more true powerful annoyance, anger toward man, and his vulnerability and corruptibility than almost anybody I know. I'm still the angriest writer I know. We get over our rampages before society or clinical insanity charges in on us. I can hardly think of very few of us who are not nuts. We find fault with everything. The world stinks, and even long after we have reconciled ourselves to that truth, we still regret it, and now and then even rage against it. Lunacy runs straight down the middle of every branch of my family. We have nobody who's not some kind of nut. What did it? How did it happen? Well, there's no answer, of course. Poker Darikis in the Haigagane Gerziger gain, vor Heiren Sorvin. Je baracin ora gakam je gertsin dun, Midas gartsne inch besser oret. Gadun muga pernet to see. Tun var te brots bidi certas, sa Midas. It's hard to see it in te inchu. Sa vat gadun vor muga pernets, var bidi ude mugin. Was ik gent en danikus waar je schat gezien hem. Lake Van. O inland sea my father saw, with stinging eyes and steadfast blurring stare. Our hearts unite in race's filial prayer. His blood to mine restores that fearful awe he felt as he from homeland's shore turned west. Smothering harsh and violent, farewell, O lake, and symbol of our grief. They spell with growing strength, denies all easy rest. He from his spirit's soil took lasting leave, from heavens that his legend had sustained, and though he left and died, there he remained, in his young ghost. Above thy cool grieve, lament, and weep in mists and pouring rains, O lake, and pool of all your mortal pains. We do not need the childish support of a geographical country to enjoy being who we are. And who really cares or needs to know why an Armenian happens to be sad? An Armenian is sad because of far, far better reasons than geography, an arrival and departure of himself somewhere geographical. It is the arrival and departure of everything and everybody everywhere that he knows isn't going to improve anything that saddens him. Saddens me at any rate, and makes me break into a song. So sing with me about eating bread and drinking wine. That's all. There was a dark man from the city of Mush, who was the father of my cousins. His name was Aslan. One afternoon, he came to our house, and in the evening, Krikord and I rode with him in the surrey to his vineyard and orchard. Krikor said, "How was it there? How was it in the old country?" "It was just like it is here," Aslan said. Everything was like this: the earth, the sky, the sun, only I was a boy. I remember having lived among dead moments, now deathless because of my remembrance, among people now dead, having been a part of the flux which is now only a remembrance of myself and this earth. The interior weather is really the only weather a man lives in. Mine has been fairly good most of the time, but there has scarcely ever been a time which there was total flawlessness, total rightness. The other children are so easy about the whole business of being who they are, being in the world and getting along. Whereas with us, it's an awful fight, all the way.
his insistence on the Armenian identity sort of a product of he himself trying to define what he is to himself. It depends where you are, whether you define yourself. If you're in a comfortable environment where everyone is like you are, where there are no distinctions, you're not as conscious of your identity. But if you're an Armenian in a prejudiced Fresno or an Armenian in Istanbul, even worse, where not only is there prejudice of today, but a history that's not very pleasant, just a generation, 2 generations back or 3 generations back, then questions of identity are infinitely more vital to the individual self. Would Saroyan have been a writer or a famous writer? First, would he have been a writer, and would he have been a famous writer if he had grown up in Turkey? Well, of course, the question was if he grew up in Bitlis, and the answer to that is that Saroyan couldn't have grown up in Bitlis. What would have happened would have been very simple. He would have been 7 years old in 1915, and he would have been either in an orphanage or dead. Okay, let's assume he survived in an orphanage. He felt the orphanage as a destructive place, a place to destroy his individual personality. The school was also something that was suppressing his individuality. He didn't want to be uniform, and he didn't want to conform. He wanted to be a free spirit. So I suppose the answer is yes, he could have become a writer. Why? Because his father wrote short essays, kept a short diary, and some poems. His father, he found those things.
I have no desire for fame. I am not out to win the Pulitzer Prize or the Nobel Prize or any other prize. I don't believe in awards like that. The appraisal of a jury doesn't mean anything to me. Which jury's approval can substitute the love of large masses? The greatest award I ever got is the hearts of people I conquered, regardless of their religion, language, or race. That is sufficient for me.
Bir kere bana sarıldı ya Mahfez Otyan diye. Öyle bir candan bir orada dedim lan bu aynı kitapların adamı bu. Kasıntı herif olur ya. Yani bu kıl aldırmaz. Kim lan gazeteci çıkıyor Otyan diye. Arkadaşım evliydi. Onu mutlu etmek için ne numara yaparsa hepsini yaptım. Gönlüm rahat. Çünkü çok mutlu oluyordu. Ve başlıyordu mırıldanmaya, söylemeye. Akşam daha canlı oluyordu, içki içi, çocukluğunu anlatıyordu. Nasıl gelmişler, New York'ta ne olmuş, babası, annesi ne yapmış. Anlatıyor. Herkes dinliyor, çevrildiği kadar. O mutluluk şeydi, anlatmalarıydı. Bir coşuyor, bir karşılığı budurdu. Yani dinleyin bak. Bizim hayatımız böyle. Bir lafı var, İngilizce söylüyor ona. Her gün ama aynı laf. Bakardı güzel orada, gün güzel başlar sordu.
Wonderful. Very nice. These are all as I imagined them, these mountains. We are from Bitlis, or from Van, or Mush, or somewhere else. They told me that the water is good. Lucien has told me all about it. She was from Bitlis too. I am at last in Bitlis. Wonderful, wonderful. This is the most meaningful day of my life. Now houses will appear. The stones of them are all cut in proper order. And my father used to walk on these roads. The children of Bitlis. Hello, hello! Children of Bitlis, how beautiful they are. It is unbelievable that I'm here. I'm in Bitlis, that my family has lived here for centuries.
Şu anda bütün ekicileri mağdur durumda. Türkiye'de birinci kalite sigara üretiliyor. Bunu görmemezlikten geliyorlar. Bunu görenler anlar, karar versinler, utansınlar bizden. İşsizlik haç safhada.
Millet acayip hepsi geberiyor. İş yok, güç yok.
Salkı bunu kendi istiyor, kusura bakmasın. Adam başı 50 milyon oyunu satar, ondan sonra oturur yatar.
Zaten halk da biliyor, devlet de biliyor, bitkisel bir şey kalmamış.
Yev Morus Takui, Horus Hor Bedrosin, Yev Mor Haripsimei, Morus Hor Minasi, Yev Mor Lusentaki, Zanantavari Mechem. Wordt Batjar Tarzan. Wordt Minas Lusentaki se, I stelle le kink Yev Amerigayer tank. I stelle I levis mezi harmar che. Hedo Minas Mahatsav, Yev Lusentaki iskabesal, Irendanika I stellen pochatrets. I specias Fresnodzana. Menkin chulaketsin kastela. Guzem asiga haskanal. Mahmet Metzhairis Minasa, inchu yerda sart genoch, Tishvar bardagan chundevav, und danika Ameriga perelu. So what is one's country? Is it land of the earth in a specific place? Rivers there? Lakes? The sky there? The way the moon comes up there? And the sun? Is one's country the trees, the vineyards, the grass, the birds, the rocks, the hills and mountains and valleys? Is it the temperature of the place in spring and summer and winter? The huts and houses, the streets of cities, the tables and chairs and the drinking of tea and talking? Is it the peach ripening in summer heat on the bough? Is it the dead in the earth there? Is it the sound of the spoken language in all the places of that country under the sky? The song of that throat and heart? That dance? Is one's country their prayers of thanks for air and water and earth and fire and life? Is it their eyes, their lips smiling, the grief?